our entire vision is to get every city on chain, and we want to expand. We want to expand so grassroots to a way that we can't be ignored on a national level. That's the I think that's the general idea. But the plan is these localized data networks will mesh in a way, just like the rest of Web3. The overall vision is to have a tapestry of localized networks that speak to or can offer more granular level of the more granular level of detail in how real world communities operate.
GM, welcome to what's going to be another great episode of DevNTell. So if you didn't know, DevNTell is a 30-minute podcast held every Friday, allowing founders, hackers, and anyone in between the opportunity to come on the podcast and showcase their product. And today I'm ecstatic to welcome Trez, who's the founder of Locale Network. So if you didn't know, Locale Network is an ecosystem of L3 data networks called city chains, focusing on economic development through DePIN, DeFi, and smart city services. So if you stick around for today's episode, you'll see Trez give us an exciting talk around the history of community cooperatives, parallel currencies, and their vision to bridge Web3 liquidity to local communities. All right, let's get into it. But first, a word from our sponsor. Today's episode of DevNTell is brought to you by our friends at Arbitrum. Arbitrum is a technology suite designed to scale Ethereum. You can use Arbitrum chains to do all the things you do on Ethereum, but your transactions will be cheaper and faster. With over 3.8 million ETH saved, 1.69 million active wallets, and over 1.7 billion total transactions, why would you want to settle for any less? Get started today by exploring Arbitrum's comprehensive docs and tutorials linked in the description below to help you get started launching your next dApp today. Now, on to today's show. GM, welcome to the show, Trez. Ecstatic to have you on.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I know we have a very interesting topic today on DevNTell, centered around fostering on-chain communities with Locale Network. And we're excited to get into that. But before we get into that, would you like to give a brief introduction about yourself to the folks who are watching today?
Yeah, lovely. So my background is mostly, by the way, call me Trez. My background is mostly in economics and sociology, throughout undergrad and in my master's program. I've been studying crypto. It's just been maybe a 13-year journey. I may have gotten into the field around 2013, 2014 is when I really started studying. Began as a Bitcoin miner, and just began to grow and learn with the industry like everyone else. And so it really kind of defined any sort of research that I did for my undergrad. And it's lovely to see that the support and resources are available now to sort of see this vision to develop. Spent some time in finance, currently in consulting, spent some time, just a bunch of odd jobs bouncing around, proxy voting for Fortune 500 companies. And at this point, you begin to see where all of it begins to mesh into one industry, one job. And you start to see how Web3 really mirrors every sector of our economy, in all aspects. And so what I've been able to learn, growing with the space and connecting it back to some of our high priorities is that nothing under the sun is new. And I'm excited to talk about that today. A bit about Modern Society Labs. We are a think tank that focus specifically on economic development, and using sort of third industrial revolution technologies to do so. And so blockchain Web3, of course, is the main focus, but we'd like to expand it to other areas, other domains. This is we see Locale as an avenue to do that.
Amazing, and sounds like you have quite the background, and yeah, it's awesome to see. I've been doing a little reading on Locale Network through your docs. It's a very interesting idea and concept you guys have. Just curious, you mentioned that you started out with Bitcoin mining. Like, was there a particular moment during your time as a Bitcoin miner that you're like, oh, something about the Ethereum ecosystem or Web3 in general is really cool and made you expand your horizon, so to speak?
Yeah. Actually, it's funny. It was actually for a class project around the time. I think it may have been in or around when Mount Gox happened, like just a couple of months after that. And we were it was just a really basic assignment over alternative money forms of money. A lot of things pops into your head that aren't necessarily considered money, and government incentives for one, like the those programs, things like the GPUs was one thing that really came to mind at the time. And so doing that assignment was just something that sort of opened my eyes to it. um but when I began to sort of dive deep into mining itself, by the way, I'm born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri. That's where a lot of our pilot program and a lot of our research is being held. Um, Here, there is the mining industry very early on was attracted to Kansas City, both in Butterfly Labs being one of the first Bitcoin miner manufacturers in and around this area. There's also we have the largest underground commercial space in the world called Subtropolis. Anything built into old caves like salt mines, and that's been underdeveloped for maybe the past 50, 60 years. So once Bitcoin mining came around, those type um environments were perfect for just placing a bunch of miners and seeing where we could go with it. And so seeing that move quickly very early on in my hometown is sort of what made me see um what the potential is. And at the time, of course, my undergraduate studies, I'm still doing focusing really heavy on community growth, economic development, in sort of ways to use that innovative tech to do so. Crypto Web3 has always been that avenue to bank the unbanked. That age old promise of crypto, to sort of foster some sort of economic liberation. And as prevalent as capable as even the most blighted areas of this country is, of having things like internet access and access to different technologies, we still were there were these pockets of there's still these pockets of poverty, pockets of economic deprivation that are not being reached by the greater Web3 space. And so me making that connection very, very early on is sort of what led me to dive so deep into the industry.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, it certainly sounds like there's a lot of motivation there, and that kind of led to what you're doing now with Locale Network. But yeah, I like. I'll give it to you to tell the story. But perhaps what's your elevator pitch of what Locale Network is before we get into the
Absolutely.
yeah, or
Absolutely.
just
Yeah. So Locale Network is an L2 network that is empowering and building an entire series and an ecosystem of L3 networks that we call city chains. And so what that essentially entails is localized data networks that sort of collect, anonymize, and privatize data local citizens that would allow them to monetize it in various different services, but also provide that sort of micro level data to local stakeholders like nonprofits, city governments, um, and local small businesses to be able to inform their policy decisions, their marketing decisions. What we learned is that data is hard to come by, um, for even your local municipal governments. We've also learned that um, it's an extreme avenue to get to get more transparency within Web3. And so we're looking to actually bridge the gap between a bunch of in-house services and third-party apps. We want to bridge that gap from Web3 liquidity to real-world communities that need it, but then also inversely, we want to be able to provide Web3 with the transparency they need to really dive deeper into real-world assets and sort of DePIN that the space is really lacking at the moment. And so what that looks like practically, we have very basic plans for a mobile wallet that would allow people to monetize their data. Anything from your Uber data to your banking account data to your telemetry with your cars and things like that, and offer services based on the collection of that data. Micro payments for local governments who need this data to inform their policy decisions, and so on and so forth. But also things like lending services, auto insurance, health insurance. We want to be able to revolutionize these areas in creating that funnel from Web3 to these communities.
Interesting. So, if I understand correctly, Locale Network is the base network, and then
Correct.
different cities basically are represented by different L3 chains that are spun on top of it. Correct?
Correct. That's correct. Mhm.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I guess you briefly touched on it, but you guys have this concept of smart cities. Um, could you give like a brief overview of exactly what you mean by a smart city? Is it basically exactly what you described, where each city is represented on a blockchain, and you have these different sectors transmitting this data transparently?
Yeah, absolutely. And then so on a more, and that's precisely right. So, but on a more technical level, I'll say it's the chain itself, and what we refer to as the city chain is sort of the off chain process coprocessor, right? So we use Cartesi's technology mostly, doing a lot of research within their community to create that off chain processing and storage layer for the data. That's what allows us to do really what allows us to eventually do really sort of innovative encryption techniques like fully homomorphic encryption, of course leaning very very close to fraud proofs and ZK proofs as well, while still keeping that data anonymized, privacy compliant, things like that, but still being able to offer that transparency. And so the way the architecture looks, of course, Locale Network being the settlement layer. A layer above that is those L3 app specific chains that we call city chains that are comprised with the data. Any sort of internal SQL queries that need to transmit data back to, or commands back to, the smart contract that sort of spun it up. And then of course different apps built around that data network, and that's essentially what we mean when we say a data network. It's a warehouse that exists on an off-chain coprocessor and feeds information to the chain, to our base layer. And so I like to give real practical understandings of where this could be useful. One of the products that we're working on now, and we do work on in-house dApps as well as third party. We do build our own. And so one of the products that we've been working on for the past year is a lending product, an RWA lending product that focuses specifically on small business loans. And particularly backed by the small by the SBA, by that organization. And so what we're looking to do is one thing we noticed around the space around uncollateralized or sort of less collateralized loans is that there is that lack of transparency once funds leave the chain, and that has a large amount of risk with it, especially when you're a global organization that is, that doesn't really have as global as you are, don't have the resources to be everywhere at once monitoring these loans, and making sure your investors are getting the level of loan monitoring, loan health, risk assessment that they deserve. And so one of the things that we conceptualized very early on is, hey, let's just use their bank accounts. Just like any other lending product would do, or any other or a bank or fintech product would do. And so what our first proof of concept was connecting Plaid APIs to this off-chain coprocessor and feeding that anonymized transaction data right to our SQLite database, which would then be able to offer some type of even privatized or even encrypted data with ZK proofs. And so we would primarily be tracking debt service, right? How much are you making a month versus how much is your monthly payment? What is that number? We can get as granular, we can get as high level as reporting to the smart contracts or reporting to the front end, a dashboard that says, yes, they're meeting this certain threshold of debt service, let's say 1.2 or 1.15, whatever the SBA, whatever their baseline is, simple binary yes or no, or we can get as granular as, giving the number, or it's right now it's 1.35. You won't know what the business is. You'll have a very brief understanding, a general understanding of what you're investing in, and at the same time, that data is real time. So you have that level of monitoring. You don't have to worry about the accuracy of the data. It's coming directly from where it needs to come from, and everyone's better off for it. But in the current state, once funds leave chain, you can no longer track it. You don't know how well the investment's doing, and that's a problem, of course, you have with traditional loans as well. But it just becomes more. It becomes more important when you're dealing with these global organizations, the decentralized organizations that sort of need real world contact, and that's a bit of what we're looking to solve.
Interesting. Yeah, it seems like you guys are building up quite the product suite. You mentioned the wallet. You mentioned this lending application. I guess, are there any cities that are co-piloting this program right now? Like, are any cities represented on Locale Network at the moment?
Yeah. So we're still in the dev stage, building out the L2, the roll up, but then also there's a lot of sort of manual research that we have to do for the L3s themselves. The pilot program, which is also sponsored by Arbitrum DAO. Shout out to those folks over there. That pilot program will actually be based in Kansas City. And so we'll do that pilot program for maybe about a year is what we're planning, with expansion, with discussion for expansion into St. Louis, Chicago, but we want to focus more on sort of mid to small size cities, where we can provide a level of value that isn't sort of dominated by one of the legacy data providers or legacy smart city operators. So that's the focus right now, mostly in the Midwest. Some discussion in or around DC and Houston, but at the moment we're hard focused on Kansas City.
Yeah, it makes sense. I was gonna say, like it would make sense to have it in Kansas to start at least. So it sounds like
Sure, yeah.
you guys are on it. You guys are on
For
it.
sure, yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it's too early to say, but is there any formal process for cities who might be interested to come to you, or
Absolutely.
are you mostly reaching out to people?
Absolutely, yeah. So a lot of the work that we do is grassroots, and we really prefer it that way. We know that there is, and I'm sorry to go off on a tangent, but we know when the discussion is around smart cities and IoT devices and sort of connecting a city in a more um, intricate tech direction is it's mostly dominated by your local municipalities or your nonprofit organizations, and we really want to focus on grassroots development of smart cities. We want to focus on what's most important to the community and then getting that data and providing the services that the community needs. And so we're really taking a ground up approach. And so the no particularly formal process at the moment. You know, we're always our door is always open to you know work with other communities to build out their solutions as well. And of course, all of this information, all of the research that we're doing internally will be open source as well. And so communities will have the ability to spin up their own chains. We're developing an IoT SDK, which would allow for one click, two click generating their own city chains. At the inception of that, it will be specific to our L2 network, but the idea is to have these smart cities or these city chains be be chain agnostic. And so we want to be able to use a decentralized sequencer like Espresso or one of the players in that area that would bring it even an extra source of revenue for city chains that um, operate with decentralized sequencers. And so very, very grassroots things, reach out to us. We'd love to hear what what your communities want. We'd love the challenge of building those things out as well. So, open door policy over here.
Amazing. There you go. If any city planner folks or anyone is watching the show today, reach out to Trez. Uh, and just something that popped into my mind.
Mhm.
Uh, because you have these city chains that are
Mhm.
basically their own chains. Do you think that like tokens will come into play for these chains? Like, do you see like
Absolutely.
Kansas coming up with like Kansas coin, like each
Absolutely.
city kind of coming up with their own utility token to do different things in their city?
Absolutely. And I'm so sorry that I meant to touch on that a bit earlier. That was actually the inception of the idea, mostly dealing with parallel currencies. A lot of that research is centuries old. Creating a currency that's only spent within a particular region has been proven time and time again that communal economics to sort of increase economic activity in any given area. This is without relying on outside funding, relying on communities, sort of the city growing or community resources coming into the community as well from tourism or things like that. It's an inherent tool, decades old tool to spur economic development. And so that's a lot of our early research was specifically around bringing parallel currencies and revolutionizing parallel currencies within crypto. So and that's sort of bridging that gap between traditional economic development and on-chain technologies that we have now to create to create a more robust version of them. And so a lot of what our research began with parallel currencies, worker and community owned cooperatives that pool mutual insurance companies as well, mutual aid. A lot of that is the backbone of our network. And what we really, really would love to see is local civic DAOs and We would love to see parallel currencies that encourage people to shop with their local small businesses. We want to see some of these things spring up organically with that data as a backbone, but also um, building the tools to allow for um, that building the tools to allow for that organic growth that we're focused on. And so I actually do have a bit of a demo of our basic wallet just to give people a practical understanding, because I know there's a lot of moving parts with the platform. So I'm just going to share my screen here really quickly.
Yeah, and you read my mind. I was gonna segue into this as well. So
Sorry about that. Lovely, lovely.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, I love you. So this is just a basic wireframe of a bit of what our smart wallet would look like. And so, as you can see, it is very, very heavily focused on that local community currencies, but also we're wanting to be very stable coin heavy as a chain. And so, as you can see, the idea is to come in, be able to provide whatever data you feel comfortable with these incentives. Of course, having recurring revenue based on how much this information is used. Of course, the privacy concerns are always there. The our encryption techniques will be publicly verifiable. They do use fraud proofs, ZK proofs. All of this information can also be found on our websites, and our documentation. But the idea is to preserve data privacy, but also collect that data to offer sort of relief services. So a bit of relief loans for small businesses, or much lower rates on car insurance and health insurance. We really want to be able to offer affordable services. And so citizens will be able to come in, connect their data sources, find areas where they can spend locally, earn their local currencies. Of course, always something that you can pay out just like any other crypto platform. Um, Track your data monetization, transaction history, like similar to a normal wallet. But also, a local business registry. Being able to understand who is connected to Web3, who is connected in your local community, to be able to accept Kansas City dollar as an example, and just support the community with that currency. Just holding the currency itself is spurring economic development. And when we get into the idea that these local currencies don't necessarily need to be backed by hard assets, money market assets, and we start to get into things like urban farming, or community our own community centers, or other forms of affordable housing, community land trust. When we start to focus on those more that grassroots level of economic development, you essentially have a pool of funds that's accruing interest in multiple different areas, backing the local currency, which is a separate side of parallel currencies and development that we haven't even been able to explore yet. Um, and so that's essentially the idea. But on the back of that, of course, we want to be able to offer local services like we mentioned earlier, small business loans, affordable housing, local voting. We really want to touch on a number of different areas and providing tools for these communities to empower themselves. And so, essentially, we want to empower communities using decentralized finance, using DePIN, and all fueled with Web3 liquidity that is starving for deal flow at the moment. So um, that's essentially the idea.
Awesome. Yeah, it looks like it's shaping up to be quite the quite the endeavor here. You mentioned the project being open source or eventually being open source. Um, for the developers who are watching here today, are there opportunities for them to pitch in and help you guys build out your vision?
Absolutely. We'd love to work with any developers listening who want to help out with the initiative. We have a pretty extensive documentation on every aspect of how we're building this. The SDK is scheduled for release sometime late August, early September, and so that's where we're hoping that our incentivized testnet will go live, and we'll be able to implement some of this technology within for our pilot project with the city of Kansas City, and we welcome all help with this. We're sort of a part of our sponsorship with Arbitrum DAO is attracting outside help with developers using the SDK, and we'd love to tap any resources that Web3 has to offer. One interesting side of this is that we use for our smart contract on the base layer, we do have Arbitrum stylus capabilities, which as I'm sure you all know, allows you to code in a number of different legacy um, programs. And so, the lift, we wanted to design our infrastructure so that lift wouldn't be too heavy for developers to adopt. Additionally, that co-processor level, also it's a full Linux machine, full Linux system. Anything that you can code there, you could build apps and products with Cartesi. And so, not Solidity heavy. You don't have to really worry about all of the specific rules of the specific rules of Solidity to be able to build an effective product. But yes, we would love any sort of help pushing this initiative forward.
Amazing, amazing, and yeah, for the developers watching today, we do have those resources that Trez mentioned in the description below, as well as Trez's um, X account as well, if you'd like to reach out to him. And as we're approaching time, I just want to ask you a final question. Here's
Absolutely.
um, after all is said and done at the city level, do you envision kind of a North Star of also expanding to say like country level as well
Absolutely.
as
Our
on chain?
our
Yeah.
our entire vision is to get every city on chain, and we want to expand. So grassroots to a way that we can't be ignored on a national level. That's the I think that's the general idea. But the plan is these localized data networks will mesh in a way just like the rest of Web3. The overall vision is to have a tapestry of localized networks that speak to or can offer the more granular level of detail in how real world communities operate. And so we can begin to have real data on replicable community services or replicable community programs. And so, if I could just go on another tangent, one of the practical examples for that I'd like to give is there was a small city in North Carolina that sort of wanted to that very basic use very basic sensor data just to solve some of their local issues. One of those issues was the opioid crisis. And so one thing that they had done very early on was put opioid level detectors, small sensors in their sewage system. There was a local nonprofit that sort of led that initiative. Of course, putting methadone clinics all over the city. Um, Released that into the sewage system, and they were tracking the highest level, the areas with the highest level of opioids in their water to determine where they would put their next methadone clinic. And I think once they had access to that data, once they were able to see those insights with the micro level data that's so difficult to get a hold of, they found a next location, and I believe decreased the city's prices by somewhere around 30%. And so that data is really valuable. It's really helpful for both local governments and nonprofits and small businesses and citizens. And we want to be able to democratize that. We want people to be able to have access to this while still keeping it privacy preserving and still having access to that Web3 liquidity. We're bridging a bunch of gaps here. And so the idea is really ambitious, but we're really excited to see how many lives we can affect with a product like this.
Amazing. And yeah, it certainly is a very ambitious project, but all the power to you guys for even thinking of doing it. It's
Mhm.
amazing. And yeah, I know I'm really looking forward to seeing it continue to be built out. And again, devs, if you're watching today and you want to help out this really ambitious project, definitely reach out to Trez. And yeah, and just with that,
Absolutely.
just want to thank you so much, Trez, for taking the time out of your day to come on the show and give us that amazing discussion and overview of Locale Network.
Absolutely, man. I definitely appreciate you having me. You all can, of course, follow the page on Twitter, follow our GitHub, shoot us an email if you want to. If you're interested in working with us further, we'd love to have you. We're pretty or we're pretty bootstrap project at the moment, so any help is welcome. But yeah, we're really excited to start getting these products out to the community, and I
Awesome.
appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. My pleasure. And yeah, I guess with that, I just want to wish everybody a very happy Wednesday, and that we'll catch you back here on Friday for another episode of DevNTell. Till then, have a good one, folks. If you enjoyed this episode of DevNTell, be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode. Till the next one, cheers.